Hello and welcome to The World Today with Kay. And today's program is a continuation from the topic from before, cross-cultural marriages. And today on set I have Jamie. Welcome, Jamie.
Hello.
Hello. It's so good for you to be here. I'm really appreciative that you've taken the time to be here.
Yeah.
Well, I want to start somewhere in the middle. The
Okay.
last guest that I had, I was asking her about whether being in neutral ground would have given her a better, approach to marriage or a good head start in her marriage. And you're in a neutral ground with your husband.
Yes.
So maybe tell us who you are, where you come from, and tell us what you think about the neutral ground, what that has done for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm American. I come from California.
Yeah.
And my husband is Italian.
Mm-hmm.
He comes from the south of Italy, but he grew up in the north of Italy. So he claims all of Italy. That's fine. And when we were first married, we lived in Pisa, which is where he was going to school.
Yeah.
So that's right in the middle. But like I said, he claims the whole country. That's fine.
Yeah.
And that was fine. Yeah, I don't know. We were saying earlier that like it's hard to know what exactly counts as culture, and I was kind of thinking in that moment that it's hard to know what in a relationship is difficult or what is easy because of culture or because of two individuals. I find that a bit confusing when I think about my own situation. So again, like I don't know how much of it was difficult living in Italy because it's Italy, and how much of it was because that's my husband's territory.
Yeah.
And I felt a disadvantage, but I did feel a disadvantage. I mean, I was very new to speaking Italian, and I was learning, but it was not easy to, navigate the country or the culture or to make friends. So I felt like I was very dependent on him for those things. And now we live in Sweden, and so it's easier for me than Italy was because more people in Sweden speak English.
Yeah.
So I'm able to express myself more naturally, and
maybe you're not as dependent on him as you were in Italy.
yes, absolutely. I don't feel that same kind of dependence. At the same time, I feel like there would be great advantages if we did live in Italy. My in-laws are there, and they're wonderful, very supportive, kind people. And we have a baby now, and we have a second one on the way, and being closer to family and a support structure, it sounds like it would have a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
But no, I absolutely see the advantage to living on neutral ground. We talk about moving to California, actually.
Ooh.
We just were there at Christmas time, and when he finishes his degree, there's a lot of job opportunities, particularly in California, and I miss it.
Yeah, of
I do.
course. Yeah.
But
So now
we'll see.
I'll backtrack to the beginning.
Okay.
So you met this man, falling in love with him, and thinking of a future together. Did you ever consider like the cultural differences?
You mean before we married?
Yeah, before you married.
Not a lot.
No.
No, I think I was more enamored of it all. And we didn't actually date for so long before we decided to marry, which also had a, well, maybe not cultural aspect to it, but it definitely a displaced aspect to it. That if we were going to be together in the same part of the world, that we had to get paperwork in order. And so maybe that happened quicker than it would have if we had a more, if it was all up to us.
Yeah.
So I was kind of left in the, he's got a cute accent and he does things so different. And I've always loved travel and learning about cultures and being in different places. And that hasn't bothered me to be outside of my own comfort zone. Yes, exactly. So it never kind of occurred to me that making a life outside my comfort zone and making it in, well, with a particular culture. So not kind of having the option to jump over here and then jump over there and jump over there. No, this is the one I've chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't really occur to me that this was going to be challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us now, coming into the marriage and now starting to relate with each other, what are the things that you found most challenging when it comes to culture?
When it comes to culture itself, again, like it's hard to kind of pinpoint what is culture. But certainly with language, we speak Italian with each other occasionally.
What's your Italian like? Is it like really good?
No.
No.
I can make myself understood on most topics, even maybe abstract or delicate things. I think that I can make myself understood, but it's nothing pretty, and you have to definitely be a generous listener in order to understand. So yeah, it's functional, but it's not very beautiful.
Yeah.
And often it requires that instead of like the conversation going from point A to point B, it goes in a lot of directions to make sure that we actually got there. But his English is wonderful, great. So
So language was not a challenge.
well, it was. It was because even if his English isn't perfect, and so I can remember early on in the marriage actually having a fight about having used a certain word, which I put a lot of emotional weight on in a certain way, and he did in another way. So these are very subtle things about speaking with someone who doesn't speak, you know. And maybe you could run into the same thing if I came from, I come from the West Coast and speaking to someone from the East Coast, but I doubt it. I think that this is more like first language and second language. Although maybe, if I married someone from Great Britain, and many words are used legitimately differently there. And we kind of had to have a conversation about, okay, looking at our disagreements with the lens of, is this us disagreeing or is this English's fault?
That was wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we've been so good about remembering to do that. But early on it was more important.
Because it was a challenge. So
Certainly.
Yeah. Any other challenges that are so notable because of culture?
Again, I don't know how much of it is culture and how much of it is who he is and who I am.
But well, who you are is partly culture.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's so
Well,
difficult to dissect it.
I know.
No, I would say sometimes that I feel like we need to talk about or renegotiate, or I need to assert myself more about what I want my role in the marriage to be, or as a parent to be, and how much I want him to do as well. And sometimes I say, maybe it's different because, of the household you grew up in, or because of the culture you grew up in. And he insists that it's not. But like we were speaking about before, maybe this is the kind of thing that you think it's not. But it is, because culture is sneaky and it's all around you and you don't notice it.
Yeah, and so maybe the things that you speak to him about, if you were with an American man, it might have been different. Do you think? Like there are things that you speak about to him that you think are natural or are supposed to be the norm if you were speaking to someone from your same culture?
Yes,
Yeah.
but I also want to say that, I don't know that if I was with an American man, I would automatically have the same culture as his. I mean, particularly
America is
now, I
big.
feel such a feeling of opposing cultures within my own country. I mean, these kinds of words that I use, maybe the words aren't being used quite correctly, or maybe they are. But if I have different political views, or maybe they're the same as him, but his family sees things different, like this informs so much of the way that we're raised and the things that we assume.
Yeah. Okay, because you were asking me before how I feel about who I will spend my life with. Is it so important that it's someone from the same culture as me? And I thought, just like you, when you started, you like the diversity in going from one place to another and enjoying different cultures. And I think it's different when you're like you're saying stuck. I mean, not in a negative way, stuck in one culture, and to to navigate through life with this culture being part of you. So then my question is, when it comes to, let's say, raising kids, and now you say that you have children, and how do you decide what culture to instill? Because definitely Italian culture and American culture, I can see, could be different in some ways. Are there things that you've spoken about that maybe could be weighty, or I don't know?
I think this is the kind of thing that I will discover more as my children get older.
Yeah.
Right now my son is 2.5, and he's learning about, Christmas just passed, right? So he's learning about Santa Claus, and he pulls a sleigh, and he knows very, very basic things about it. This isn't the story in Italy, although, they've, like anything with, I think, American culture, they've heard it and they do it when it's convenient. But in Italy, at Christmas time, they open their presents at midnight and on Christmas Eve. And in the States, you have to wait until it's morning and you go downstairs and you do it all together.
Yeah.
And I don't think these things matter. When we're in Italy, we do it that way. And I think it's wonderful to I'm so pleased that I'm raising my son bilingual and actually trilingual, because Sweden has its influence as well. And like to know about different traditions and different foods, and maybe it's when it comes down to different values that I become a little bit more prickly. And again, that's in very subtle
what are the examples
ways.
of these values, like?
And once again, I don't know that that's culture so much as in my household when I was raised, it was done in certain ways, and I see that that's a good thing. So one thing that we fight about a lot, which even people within my own culture I know all the time fight or disagree about, like how much time for him to see a screen, how much time he should spend, and that, I hate it. And so this is one of the things that we do a lot. And
so would you prefer it longer or shorter?
Oh my gosh, never.
Shorter.
Shorter for sure. But I have to accept that whether it's because of culture or because we're just two different humans with two different sets of priorities and schedules, that Daddy does it one way and I do it another way, and we find a balance somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
But when you asked, so I have a son, but I'm pregnant with my daughter right now.
Right.
And when I think about culture, and I'll speak in gross stereotypes and acknowledge that from the beginning, because I don't know what it will be like to have a daughter in the elements of Italian culture that I am within. But I imagine that will be harder. I just think that everywhere, maybe in the world, maybe Sweden least of all, but also in my culture, there's no doubt that girls are, that the things that culture expects of girls are perhaps more limiting than what culture expects of and encourages for boys. And I feel a very strong desire to be a counterbalance to that, and I'm not quite sure how when I'm talking about my own culture. And then when we're talking about a culture that I don't have such a good grasp on, that's really a bit confusing and even scary for me. So the way I'm dealing with it so far is saying, no pink, no one can give her pink, which is ridiculous, but I'm trying to just send kind of a general message that is, maybe I haven't even quite worked it out entirely, but it's something like,
but I don't think
don't put her in a certain shape box. Let her just be a person.
Ooh, that's going to be interesting.
Wish
you
me
can
luck.
do this. But I'm also thinking, did you ever research about Italian culture? Is that something that you found interesting? And maybe after getting married, did you now want to know much more about it?
I never researched about Italian culture. I certainly had some preconceptions. Everyone has certain ideas about what Italy and Italians are. And when I was living in Italy, the work that I was doing was as a teacher of English. And the primary way that I approached that work was one-to-one, having conversations. So I learned a lot about Italian culture, and I got that from a wide variety of people,
Yeah.
and I wasn't at all hesitant to ask questions and go deeper and try to, you know, figure out what that person knew and was passionate about, and let that be our conversation topic. So it was very informative to me as well.
Okay. And your in-laws, your parents-in-law, like, how did they approach it? Did you feel welcome? Did you feel, you know, when you moved to Italy, did you feel like this is the way I expected it to be? Were your expectations met, or were they cut off, or?
Yeah, in some ways,
Yeah.
they were met. It was super positive. I mean, some people have stories about like, oh my God, my in-laws, and I have nothing like that, nothing like that.
Yeah.
And maybe that was exactly because of the lack of shared culture. So like, if you have two things that are opposite, it's because they have so much in common that something is different about them. Like you can't say that Madonna and a toothbrush are opposite because they don't have anything in common.
Yeah.
It has to be that black and white are opposite because they are both colors, and they're so. I felt like we had so little in common that there was nothing to oppose on. I couldn't, talk about my political views and theirs, or there was nothing. I mean, we didn't have language in common. I was I was on vacation with them. That's basically how I met them. Is we went on vacation to the Calabrian coast, and I spent my time like smiling and saying ciao.
Yeah. But you still felt like really welcome,
Yes,
and they tried to
absolutely.
involve you in stuff.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
they were very kind, and what they were able to understand about me, they saw that I had things in common with their son, who I would almost say that Luca is so much not a typical Italian that maybe the ways we connected, particularly in the beginning, were ways that we were both maybe kind of outcasts of our culture, or rebels against our culture, or something like this. So we had this
That
kind
in
of
common.
subculture in common. And I remember his parents said something like, I can't possibly remember how it goes in Italian, but something like, oh, God made them for each other.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I mean, he's, a vegan, and he's a meditator, and we went and it was his mother's birthday party that we went to. That's where I first met his family. So we're at this big Italian restaurant, and everyone's having, the courses after courses, and it's very meaty stuff. And Luca was like, I will have a salad. And I was like, I will also have a salad.
Yeah. Much made in heaven. That's great. I mean, I like this conversation, just hearing how different yet similar you are, and how you've been able to work through things anyway. Is there anything that you feel maybe, oh, we should have discussed this before we got married?
Oh, sure. But I don't know how we could have done it. I mean, life doesn't have any dress rehearsals, and that's really such a shame, because I feel like at this point in my life I can say, oh, now that I know all these things, I wish that beforehand I'd asked about all these things. I didn't know those things to ask about them before. And that applied very much to being married and adjusting to that life, and then that reapplied to becoming a parent. And I'm sure it's going to reapply to becoming a parent of two, which can't be so different, but I think it's going to be different.
It's going to be different.
Yeah. So it's, I'm trying to be open, I guess. And
for the viewers like watching who are contemplating, that's why I want you to,
If
what
I
are
knew
what
now,
are
if I
the
knew
things
then.
you should have maybe spoken about or consulted somebody about, and specifically,
Well, I guess things like, so I used the example of the screen with my son earlier. And I mean, if you try to narrow it down to these very specific questions and answers, how much time do you think a child should look at a screen per day? Then I think that you're really missing the point, because it's going to be something else. But maybe a more general question could be asked, like, what do you want your child to be like at these different stages, and what do you think that you need to do as a parent in order to allow that to happen, and what do you think is going to be hard about that, but you're willing to do that harder thing because it's a priority to you. But again, like, I don't know if that would have revealed this issue, or if we were so much looking to be partners that somehow that would have guided the conversation towards agreement
Yeah.
rather than revealing disagreement and dealing with it ahead of time.
You know, when people get married, I hear that many people go for counseling before they get married. Right?
That's probably
Do
a good idea.
yeah. Do you think that there should be like two different types of counseling? Like if you're in a cross-cultural marriage, you should get a different kind of counseling. Do you think?
Well, I didn't have any kind of counseling, so I don't have anything
To compare
it to.
Okay.
But I think certainly there could be a niche type of counselor
Yeah,
that
yeah.
says, I'm not just a marriage counselor, I'm
Yeah.
a cross-cultural marriage counselor, because it's got to be that's a very particular situation to try to anticipate.
I think so. I think generally, I mean, I'm not married, but I think marriage is already complicated on its own.
Yes.
And then now if you're coming from two different cultures, I think it even makes it more complicated. And it's just so amazing when two people from different worlds can come together and make everything work. And I don't know what catalyzes this. I'm still going on. I'm excited about it. Like, what is it that excites you most about being in this kind of relationship? Maybe you don't think that it's different because that's all you know. That's what you've been in. But maybe you've been in a relationship that's not cross-cultural before.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing I find exciting is also something that in other moments I find frustrating. So it's just different sides of the same coin, and it depends on my mindset. But the fact that I am so far away from where I grew up, and I think that expands me as a person.
Yeah.
And I think it absolutely expands my children. And I think that that's wonderful. And I think that there's a lot of potential in it. And it's actually something that I've always imagined for myself. Like I love that I come from the States and he comes from Italy, and here we live in Sweden. And in fact, we met in Denmark, and our child's born in Sweden, and our second child's going to be born in Sweden. And the only way the story could be better is that the second child was born in another country, and like just keep adding, pieces to this quilt. And I like that. I think that has a lot of potential, and I don't know, maybe I'm romanticizing the future, but I think that right now with a son this age and another child coming, and my husband's working on a PhD, so he's very, very focused on that. Like, it's an intense time. I look at other parents that have kids that are like 8 and 10, and I go, okay, that's going to be good.
Hey, okay, that's great. Yeah, so you keep it positive, and yeah, that's awesome. It's so good to hear all this, seriously. I'm sure people who are watching would be very motivated just to see the positivity, even with the tension, with the challenges, that you can still keep it positive. And someone who's contemplating can be like, yeah, I want to do this. It's something that I can do. So you've been really encouraging, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. That's great.
Yeah, because you've shed light on both the tough times and the good times as well. Yeah, but before we end this, what are the most exciting things about the Italian culture, do you think?
The most exciting things about Italian culture?
Yeah.
So when I tell people that I used to live in Italy, or that my in-laws, my husband's family is Italian, people get a dreamy look in their eye. I mean, Italy is a beautiful and passionate and flavorful place, and all of those things are true. And maybe this is true as a metaphor of being in any kind of cross-cultural relationship versus imagining it. That I often say, well, living in Italy and visiting Italy are two different things.
Of course, yeah.
They're very different things. So, but all the things that people are excited about visiting Italy are true things. So if I make sure that I'm looking through the lens of, if someone was visiting me here, like this is something I often thought when I was living there, they would be amazed by this. And I find that I'm, annoyed by it just because it's my daily life. But for example, there was this construction project when we lived in Pisa, and it had started, I mean, we only lived there about 2 years, but it had started 8 years before, and it finished right before we left, and it was supposed to take a year. But they started digging it up, and whoops, oh, there's an ancient church underneath here. We had no idea. Now we have to remove it brick by brick. So this is why it took so very long. But like, how incredible to live in a place that is that intensely rich with history and culture, and just something that's worth preserving, and it's right there under your feet. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
This is why everything, well, maybe there's more reasons than that, but this is part of the reason that everything takes a long time to do in Italy, because it's just, it's so layered. It's so full of surprises. And I think that's true of the culture too. The food is incredible. The town that my in-laws come from in the south of Italy is an ancient place, and it's full of these ancient Greek ruins, and they're just right there, and it's extraordinary. It's really extraordinary.
Yeah. Wow.
It's something that's so completely different than what I'm used to. You know, I used to live in an apartment building that was, again, it was annoying because it was so drafty and it was so falling apart, but it was 500 years old. What do you expect? You know, there's these frescoes on the ceiling that are cracking, and oh, it's so dusty. But like, if there's a building in my hometown, I used to live in an apartment, it was 100 years old, and I felt like, oh, I'm in a really special place. It's so old, it's so historic. No. So it's, I found that really wonderful.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I also was able to understand that they take time to do everything.
Sure.
Did that irritate you? Because I think the American culture is like everything just happens as, you know, as it goes, and everything is on time. Is it that way? Because I have a brother-in-law who got so frustrated being in Kenya. And he just thought, oh my goodness, nothing is happening. The system doesn't work. He complained about everything. I just thought, what is it like in America?
Yeah. Sure. I've grown up with expectations that things should go in a certain way. And, you know, some things take time and some things don't. But that, like, I feel like America is a country that has more accountability, and some people would describe that as being like a sue happy culture, but like if something goes wrong, you can point to where it went wrong. You can say this shouldn't have happened, and I don't find that so much dealing with bureaucracy or with much of anything. I won't even blame that in Italy, I'll say in Europe in general. So yeah, it's just, I have to sometimes remind myself that what I expect, customer service is another one. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The way I expect something to go, it won't happen that way elsewhere. And
and you don't look at it as positive or right and wrong. You look at it as different.
When I'm my best self, that's true.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. It's been wonderful having you here.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. So viewers, you've heard it. So I hope you get really encouraged if you're hoping to get into a cross-cultural marriage. And thank you for watching. And if you have any reflections, you can write to us or email us on Facebook, on Twitter. Thank you and have a good day.